He was known to the world as a self-made billionaire, a man whose name appeared on business magazines, news channels, and charity boards. People admired his sharp mind, his expensive suits, and the empire he built from nothing. To outsiders, his life looked perfect, filled with luxury, power, and respect. But behind the glass walls of his penthouse and the closed doors of his private office, there was a secret he never allowed to surface. The billionaire had grown up poor, learning early that weakness was punished and emotions were dangerous. He promised himself that one day he would be powerful enough to never feel helpless again. That promise drove him harder than any dream of happiness. As his wealth increased, his heart slowly hardened. He learned to trust numbers more than people, contracts more than relationships, and control more than love. Years ago, during the early rise of his career, his life briefly crossed paths with a woman he tried hard to forget. She was kind, quiet, and carried a warmth he did not understand at the time. Their relationship was short, hidden, and never meant to last. When she told him she was pregnant, fear gripped him instead of joy. He saw the child not as a blessing, but as a threat to his ambition and reputation. He paid money to make the problem disappear, or so he thought. He convinced himself that financial support was enough, that distance would protect him from responsibility. When the woman disappeared from his life, he believed the chapter was closed forever, but life does not forget so easily, and the truth has a way of waiting patiently. Years passed, and the billionaire climbed higher. He built companies, bought politicians, and controlled industries, yet something inside him remained unsettled. Late at night, when the city lights flickered below his window, he felt a strange emptiness he could not explain. He buried that feeling under work, deals, and luxury, refusing to look too deeply within. Then one day, a message arrived that shook the foundation of his carefully controlled world. The woman was gone, and the child was sick, very sick. The boy needed care, attention, and a father. The billionaire read the words again and again, his hands trembling not from love, but from fear, fear of exposure, fear of weakness, fear of responsibility. He visited the boy in secret, standing at a distance, watching a small, fragile body lying on a hospital bed. The child had dark skin, tired eyes, and a silent strength that unsettled him. For a brief moment, something human stirred his chest, but it was quickly crushed by cold logic. He told himself that compassion would ruin everything he had built. The doctors spoke of long-term treatment, expenses, and emotional support. The billionaire heard only risk and inconvenience. He imagined headlines, scandals, and whispers. His empire was built on control, and this child represented chaos. He began to see the boy not as his blood, but as a mistake that refused to disappear. Instead of stepping forward, he stepped back. He arranged transport, paperwork, and silence. He believed that if he removed the boy from his world completely, the guilt would fade. He told himself that he was not cruel, only practical. He convinced himself that the child would be better off without him. That night, as he drove through empty roads away from the city, the boy sat quietly in the back seat, weak and unaware of the decision being made for him. The billionaire avoided looking into the mirror, afraid of what he might see in his own eyes. He kept reminding himself that this was necessary, that this was the only way. Inside his mind, excuses echoed loudly. He told himself that he had already given enough, that his success mattered more, that emotions were a luxury for ordinary people. Yet deep down, a voice whispered that this choice would follow him forever. The road stretched endlessly ahead, silent and unforgiving. As the car slowed down, the billionaire felt a weight press on his chest, heavier than any financial loss he had ever faced. He ignored it, just as he had ignored many things in his life, choosing power over compassion, image over truth. This was the moment where everything began, though he did not know it yet. This was the night his secret turned into a curse. The decision he made here would shape two lives in opposite ways. One would rise through pain and resilience. The other would slowly crumble under regret. At that moment, the billionaire still believed he was in control. He believed money could protect him from consequences. He believed silence could erase blood ties. He believed walking away was strength. But the road has a memory, and time never forgets what the heart tries to bury. This was the beginning of a story not about wealth, but about humanity lost and lessons waiting to be paid in full. The car moved slowly through the empty road, its headlights cutting through the darkness like weak promises. The city lights were far behind now, replaced by silence, broken only by the sound of tires rolling over rough asphalt. The billionaire sat in the front seat, stiff and silent, his hands tied on the steering wheel. He did not look back, even though he knew the boy was there, small, sick, and trusting. The boy was wrapped in a thin jacket, his body weak from illness. His breathing was uneven, and every bump in the road made him wince. He did not understand where they were going, but he believed the man in front of him was taking him somewhere safe. Children believe easily, especially when they are tired and afraid. The billionaire told himself not to think. Thinking led to doubt, and doubt led to weakness. He focused on the road, counting the distance, measuring time like a business deal. He kept reminding himself that this was necessary, that this was the cleanest solution. That belief was the only thing keeping his hand from shaking. They reached a stretch of road where there were no buildings, no houses, no signs of life, just trees, shadows, and cold air. The billionaire slowed the car and pulled over. The engine hummed softly, as if even the car sensed something was wrong. For a moment, nothing happened. The boy looked forward, confused, then softly asked where they were. His voice was weak but hopeful. That single question pierced the billionaire deeper than any accusation could have. He opened his mouth to answer, but no honest words came out, so he chose silence. He stepped out of the car and walked around to the back door. His movements were slow, heavy, like each step carried invisible chains. When he opened the door, the boy looked up at him with tired eyes, eyes that searched for reassurance, not knowing this was the last time they would meet like this. The billionaire told the boy they needed to stop for a moment. His voice sounded calm, practiced, almost kind. He helped the boy out of the car and placed him gently on the side of the road. The boy's feet touched the cold ground, and he shivered, hugging himself for warmth. For a brief second, the billionaire saw himself reflected in the boy's eyes, not as a powerful man, but as a father. That moment terrified him, because it demanded something he refused to give. He stepped back, breaking eye contact, as if distance could erase blood. He placed a small bag beside the boy. Inside were some clothes, medicine, and money. He believed money could speak for him, explain for him, forgive for him. He told himself this was generosity, not abandonment. The boy asked when they would leave, when they would continue the journey. The billionaire nodded and said soon. Even as the lie left his mouth, it burned. He turned away quickly, afraid the truth might spill out if he stayed 1 second longer. He got back into the car and closed the door. The sound echoed loudly in the quiet night. The boy stood there, watching, confused but still trusting. The billionaire started the engine. His heart pounded, his chest tight. His mind screamed to stop, but his pride pressed the pedal down. As the car began to move, the boy called out softly, not crying, not screaming, just calling. That sound followed the billionaire like a shadow, wrapping around his mind. He did not look back. He told himself that looking back would destroy him. The car disappeared into the darkness, leaving the boy alone on the roadside. The night grew colder, and the silence grew heavier. The boy sat down slowly, his strength fading. He hugged his knees, trying to stay warm, trying to understand. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt strange. The boy's illness made everything blur. His head ached, his body burned. He thought about the man who left him, wondering what he had done wrong. Children often blame themselves for adult cruelty. Cars passed occasionally, their lights flashing by without stopping. Each time, the boy lifted his head with hope, only to feel it fall again. His fear grew, not loud, but deep, settling into his bones. Meanwhile, the billionaire drove through the night, faster now, as if speed could outrun guilt. His mind replayed the scene again and again. He told himself the boy would be found, that someone kind would help, that this was not a death sentence. These thoughts were his shield. But beneath those excuses, something cracked. A tightness formed his chest that no breath could ease. His success, his wealth, his power felt suddenly small, fragile. He pushed the feeling down, the way he always had. By the time he reached the city, Dawn was beginning to rise. Lights spilled over buildings and streets, and life continued as if nothing had happened. The billionaire returned to his world of glass towers and meetings, acting as though the night had been just another drive. But far from the city, on that forgotten road, a sick boy lay waiting for help, abandoned by the one person who should have protected him. The road held the truth now, absorbing the pain, storing it quietly. That night became a dividing line between two lives. One life moved forward with comfort but growing emptiness. The other was forced into suffering, survival, and strength. Neither would ever truly escape what happened on that road. The abandonment was complete, silent, and cruel, and though the billionaire believed he had buried his past, the road remembered, time remembered, and one day, that memory would return, heavier than any fortune. The sun was already high when the boy opened his eyes again. His body felt heavy, and his throat was dry. The road looked endless, stretching in both directions with no sign of the man who had left him. For a moment, he wondered if the night had been a bad dream, but the cold ground beneath him told the truth. He tried to stand, but his legs trembled, forcing him to sit back down. The sickness inside him had not left. It had grown stronger, his head spun, and his chest felt tight. Still, he refused to lie down again. Something inside him whispered that giving up would be dangerous. Cars passed by, some slowing down, others speeding away. Dust rose with every movement, and the noise made his head hurt. He raised his hand once, then again, but no one stopped. Faces passed him like shadows, curious but distant. Fear slowly wrapped around him, not sharp but quiet and deep. As the hours dragged on, hunger joined the pain. His stomach growled softly, reminding him how weak he had become. He opened the small bag the man had left. Inside were pills he did not understand, a little money, and clothes too big for him. The bag felt useless, heavy with false hope. Just when the sun began to burn his skin, a sound reached his ears, slower than the others. A truck was approaching, old and worn, its engine coughing with age. The truck slowed, then stopped a few steps away. Dust settled, and silence followed. A man stepped out, tall but thin, his clothes faded, his face marked by years of hard work. His eyes were tired, but kind. He looked at the boy not with fear or judgment, but with concern. That look alone made the boy's chest tighten. The man asked softly if he was all right. The boy tried to answer, but his voice came out weak and broken. The man did not ask many questions. He crouched down, noticing the boy's shaking hands and pale face. He knew sickness when he saw it. Life had taught him that much. Without hesitation, the man offered water, holding the bottle gently as the boy drank. Each sip felt like life returning slowly. The man placed a jacket around the boy's shoulders, shielding him from the harsh sun. That simple act felt warmer than anything the boy had felt in a long time. The man helped him into the truck, supporting his weight as if it mattered. As they drove away from the road, the boy looked back once, not out of hope, but to say goodbye to the place where fear had lived all night. The road disappeared behind them, but the memory stayed. The man lived in a small house on the edge of a quiet town. It was nothing special, old walls, creaking floors, and simple furniture, but it felt safe. The boy was laid down on a clean bed, something he had not experienced in a long time. The man called a local doctor, using money he had saved carefully over the years. The doctor examined the boy and shook his head, saying the illness was serious but not hopeless. With care, medicine, and rest, the boy could survive. Those words felt like a miracle. The man nodded, accepting the responsibility without complaint. Days turned into weeks, and the boy slowly began to heal. The man woke early each morning to prepare simple meals, making sure the boy ate. He reminded him to take medicine, sat beside him when the pain returned, and never once asked where his parents were. At night, when the boy cried softly, the man stayed near, pretending to fix something or clean, not wanting to embarrass him. He understood pain without words, because his own life had been full of loss. He had lost family, dreams, and chances, but not kindness. As the boy gained strength, he began to speak more, his voice still soft, but filled with curiosity. He asked questions about the town, the man's work, and the stars outside the window. The man answered patiently, never rushing him, never making him feel small. The boy did not talk about the road at first. Some wounds take time to open, but the man did not push. He believed that trust should grow naturally, like plants after rain. One evening, while sitting outside watching the sky change colors, the boy finally asked why the man helped him. The man smiled gently and said that someone once helped him when he had nothing. He said kindness does not belong to the rich, it belongs to the human heart. That answer stayed with the boy. Settling deep inside him, he began to understand that family was not always about blood. Sometimes it was about choice. Months passed, and the boy became stronger than anyone expected. His laughter returned slowly, first shy, then brighter. He helped around the house, sweeping floors, fetching water, doing small tasks with pride. The man never treated him like a burden, only like a blessing. The town slowly accepted the boy. Children stared at first, then smiled. Some asked questions, others shared food. Life began to feel possible again, even with sickness, even with scars. But late at night, when the house was quiet, the boy still remembered the car lights fading into darkness. That memory hurt, but it also lit a fire inside him. He promised himself that one day, he would be strong enough to never be left behind again. The man did not know it yet, but by stopping that old truck on a forgotten road, he had changed 2 lives forever. One life was saved, the other was given meaning again. Far away, the billionaire slept in silk sheets, unaware that the boy he abandoned was learning the true value of humanity. The road had taken something from the boy, but it had also given him something greater, a chance to grow through kindness, pain, and quiet strength. Years passed quietly, like pages turning without sound. The boy grew taller, his body still thin but stronger than before. The sickness never fully left him, but it no longer controlled his days. It became a shadow he learned to walk with, not something that stopped him from moving forward. Life in the small town was simple, sometimes hard, but honest. The man who saved him became more than a guardian. He became a steady presence, someone who showed him what responsibility and care truly meant. They did not have much money, but they shared meals, laughter, and long conversations under the open sky. The boy went to school like other children, though the path was not easy. Some kids whispered, some stared, and some asked questions that hurt more than silence. His skin color, his quiet nature, and his past made him different in their eyes. At first, he tried to disappear, sitting at the back of the class, keeping his head down. But something inside him refused to break. Every insult, every look, every moment of weakness turned into fuel. He studied harder than anyone else, reading late into the night, his small desk lit by a weak lamp. Knowledge became his escape, his weapon, and his hope. The teachers noticed his effort. They saw a boy who listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and never complained. Even on days when pain returned and his hand shook, he showed up. He believed that missing a day meant losing ground, and he could not afford to fall behind. At home, the man encouraged him without pressure. He never demanded success, only honesty and effort. When the boy failed, he was told that failure was not shameful. Giving up was. Those words settled deep in his heart. As the boy grew older, he began to understand more about the world and his place in it. He learned about injustice, about how some people were born with power while others fought for survival. He saw how kindness was often ignored and cruelty often rewarded. Instead of becoming bitter, he became focused. His health improved slowly, but doctors warned that he would always need care. He accepted this reality without anger. He learned discipline, managing his body, his time, and his emotions carefully. Pain taught him patience, and patience taught him strength. Teenage years brought new challenges. Doubt crept in quietly, especially on nights when memories of the road returned. He sometimes wondered why he had been chosen to suffer, what mistake he had made. Those thoughts came uninvited, but they no longer stayed long. Whenever the weight became too heavy, he remembered the man who stopped his truck. He remembered the first glass of water, the jacket on his shoulders, the quiet kindness that saved him. That memory reminded him that humanity still existed, even when it felt rare. He began helping others in small ways, tutoring younger students, carrying groceries for neighbors, listening when someone needed to speak. He did not do it for praise, but because it felt right. Giving gave his pain a purpose. The town slowly began to see him differently, no longer as the sick boy from nowhere, but as someone reliable, thoughtful, and strong. People trusted him, respected him, and spoke his name with warmth. This acceptance healed parts of him that medicine never could. The man watched this transformation with quiet pride. He never said much, but his eyes showed everything. He knew the boy was becoming someone extraordinary, not because of talent alone, but because of character shaped by hardship. One evening, while sitting together after dinner, the boy asked about his future. His voice was calm, but his eyes were serious. He wanted to know if it was foolish to dream big, given where he came from and what he carried inside him. The man smiled softly and said that the world often underestimated those who suffered early. He said pain could either crush a person or sharpen them, depending on the choices they made. He told the boy that his past did not define his limits, only his starting point. Those words stayed with him, guiding his decisions. He began to dream not just of survival, but of impact. He wanted to become someone whose presence mattered, someone who could protect others the way he once needed protection. As adulthood approached, opportunities appeared, scholarships, recommendations, and chances earned through effort and discipline. Each step forward felt unreal, but earned. He carried gratitude quietly, never forgetting where he started. Yet no matter how far he moved from that road, the memory never disappeared. It lived inside him, not as a wound, but as a reminder of what abandonment felt like and what compassion could do. Far away, the billionaire continued his life surrounded by wealth, unaware that the boy he left behind was growing into a man shaped by pain, discipline, and quiet courage. While one life moved forward in comfort but emptiness, the other was being built slowly, honestly, and with purpose. This phase of the boy's life was not loud or dramatic, but it was powerful. It was the foundation, the unseen work that would one day support everything he became. Strength was not born in ease. It was carved in struggle, day by day. And though the boy did not know it yet, the lessons learned in these years would prepare him for a future encounter that would change everything. The boy stepped into adulthood quietly, without celebration or noise. By then, people no longer called him the sick child found on the road. They knew him as someone dependable, thoughtful, and unusually calm for his age. His body still carried weakness at times, but his mind had grown sharp and steady. He left the small town with a single bag and a heart full of gratitude. The man who saved him stood at the bus stop, saying little, as always, but his eyes were heavy with emotion. They did not speak of the past. They did not need to. Everything that mattered had already been shared through years of care and silence. Life outside the town was not kind. The world was larger, colder, and faster. The boy faced competition, doubt, and moments where he felt invisible again, but he was no longer afraid of struggle. He had lived through worse and survived. He studied relentlessly, not chasing praise, but purpose. He chose a path that allowed him to help others, especially those forgotten by society. Late nights, early mornings, and constant pressure became normal. He treated discipline like a promise to himself. There were days when his health failed him, when pain forced him to stop, lie down, and breathe through discomfort. Each time, he feared losing everything he had worked for. But each time, he returned stronger, refusing to let his body decide his worth. Teachers, mentors, and supervisors noticed something rare in him. He listened more than he spoke. He worked without complaint. He led without pride. Opportunities came slowly, but they came. And when they did, he was ready. Years passed, and his name began to mean something. Not famous, not powerful, but respected. People trusted him with responsibility, with decisions, with lives. He became known for fairness, honesty, and quiet leadership. He never spoke about his past, the road, the abandonment, the sickness. He carried those memories privately, not as shame, but as fuel. They reminded him why kindness mattered and why cruelty left scars long after it happened. As his influence grew, so did his vision. He wanted to build systems that protected the weak. He wanted to create chances for children who started life already behind. His work was not about revenge or proving anything. It was about balance. One project changed everything. A large initiative aimed at supporting sick and abandoned children. It gained attention. First locally, then nationally, donations followed, partnerships formed, and media interest slowly increased. When reporters asked why this cause mattered so much to him, he answered simply. He said that no child should feel unwanted. No child should be left behind because of fear or convenience. His words were calm, but they carried weight. Behind closed doors, he struggled with doubt. He sometimes wondered if success would expose his past, if someone would connect the dots and reopen wounds. But he reminded himself that truth was not his enemy. Silence once was, but no longer. The man who saved him watched from afar, following his progress through news articles and quiet pride. He never asked for credit, never sought recognition. Seeing the boy become a man of purpose was enough. Meanwhile, far away, the billionaire's world began to crack. His businesses still stood tall, but his personal life felt hollow. People around him praised his success, but none truly knew him. Nights became longer, sleep harder, and memories louder. He began hearing the name of a rising figure connected to charity and reform, a man praised for compassion, discipline, and integrity. The name felt strange in his mouth, familiar in an uncomfortable way. At first, he ignored it. Many stories passed through his world, but something about this one stayed. The focus on abandoned children, on sickness, on forgotten lives. It felt like a mirror he did not want to look into. He saw a photo one day, just a glance. Nothing more, but it stopped him cold. The man's face carried something hauntingly familiar. Not the features, but the eyes, quiet, steady, and wounded in a way wealth could not heal. The billionaire dismissed the feeling, telling himself it was coincidence. The past was buried, finished, forgotten, or so he believed. The man who rose from pain continued his work, unaware that fate was tightening its grip. His life felt meaningful now, grounded. His pain had been transformed into purpose, his survival into service. But destiny is patient. It waits for the right moment. And soon, the paths of abandonment and redemption would move closer, drawing two lives toward a meeting neither could escape. This part of the story was about rise, not in wealth, but in character, not in power, but in impact. The boy had become a man who mattered, and somewhere deep inside the billionaire, fear began to whisper, knowing that what was lost had not disappeared, it had grown. The billionaire's life began to slow down in ways money could not fix. His days were still full of meetings, assistants, and flashing screens. But something inside him felt worn and tired. Success no longer brought excitement, and victories felt empty the moment they were achieved. He started waking up before dawn, his sleep broken by thoughts he could not control. Faces from the past appeared in his mind. Moments he had buried returned without warning. He would sit on the edge of his bed staring at the floor, feeling a weight on his chest that no doctor could explain. His health began to fail quietly, first with small signs he ignored. Headaches, shortness of breath, shaking hands. Doctors advised rest, but rest felt impossible. When he closed his eyes, memories rushed in louder than noise. The empire he built was still standing, but cracks appeared, trust weakened, partners questioned decisions, and deals began to fall apart. For the first time in his life, he felt unsure, not because of competition, but because of himself. He tried to distract his mind with luxury, traveling to places others dreamed of, buying things he did not need, surrounding himself with people who laughed at his jokes. But when the rooms emptied, silence waited for him, cold and unforgiving. One night, while scrolling through news on his tablet, he saw the story again. The rising man, the charity, the work with abandoned and sick children. This time he did not scroll past. He read every word slowly, his heart beating harder with each line. The man's values disturbed him. The words felt personal, as if they were written for him alone. He felt exposed without being named, accused without being pointed at. His hands trembled as he set the tablet down. From that night on, curiosity turned into obsession. He began following the man's work closely, watching interviews, reading speeches, studying expressions. The more he watched, the stronger the feeling grew, a feeling he tried desperately to deny. He started asking questions discreetly, ordering private investigations under the excuse of business interest. He told himself it was nothing, just curiosity, just caution, but deep inside, fear had taken root. The investigator returned with reports, background information, timelines, locations, dates, connections. Each detail tightened the knot inside his chest. The pieces began to align in ways he could no longer ignore. He stopped the investigation before it reached the truth. Some answers felt too dangerous. He was not ready to face what they might reveal. Cowardice disguised itself as caution. At the same time, guilt grew heavier. He began seeing the road in his dreams, the quiet night, the small figure standing alone. In the dream, the boy always looked at him, never accusing, never begging, just watching. That silence hurt more than anger ever could. He tried to justify his past again, reminding himself of pressure, ambition, fear, but those excuses sounded weak now, hollow. He realized that time had not erased his choice. It had only waited. Loneliness wrapped around him tighter than before. People around him sensed the change. They whispered about his mood, his distance, his decline. For the first time, his power felt fragile. He began giving away money to charities without feeling relief. Writing checks did nothing to ease the pressure inside. He learned painfully that generosity without remorse was empty. One evening, during a public event, he saw the man in person for the first time, across a large hall. Surrounded by people, calm and grounded, the billionaire felt his breath catch. His knees weakened slightly. The man spoke about responsibility, about choices that shape lives. His voice was steady, his eyes honest. The billionaire could not look away. Every word felt like a quiet judgment. As applause filled the room, the billionaire stood frozen, unable to clap, unable to move. The truth stood before him, alive and undeniable, and it terrified him. He left the event early, his mind spinning. His car drove through streets that felt unfamiliar. He realized he had never truly lived, only accumulated. That night, he sat alone in his office long after everyone had left, looking at the city below, the same view he once loved. It no longer impressed him. It felt distant, meaningless. For the first time, he admitted the truth to himself. He had not abandoned a problem, had abandoned a human life, and that life had grown stronger without him. The realization crushed him slowly, completely. His wealth could not protect him from this truth. His power could not rewrite the past. Part 6 marked the fall of the man who once believed he was untouchable, the beginning of regret, the slow collapse of pride, the moment he understood that some debts are not paid with money, but with the heart. The meeting happened without warning, not planned by fate, but arranged by circumstance. A conference brought powerful people together under bright lights and polished words. The billionaire arrived late, his face tired, his confidence carefully worn like a mask. He told himself he was there for business, nothing more. Across the hall, the man who once lay sick on a lonely road stood calmly, speaking with quiet authority. His presence was not loud, but it carried weight. People leaned in when he spoke, not because of fear, but respect. The billionaire watched him from a distance, his chest tightening with every second. When their eyes finally met, the world seemed to slow. The man's gaze was steady, curious, but not emotional. He saw a wealthy stranger, nothing more, but the billionaire saw the past standing alive before him, breathing, strong, undeniable. They were introduced formally, names exchanged like strangers, hands met briefly. The billionaire's grip trembled slightly, while the man's was firm and calm. There was no recognition in the man's eyes, no anger, no memory on the surface, and that hurt more than hatred ever could. They spoke politely, exchanging words about projects, values, and responsibility. The man spoke about protecting the vulnerable, about never turning away from suffering. His words were not aimed, but they landed directly in the billionaire's heart. The billionaire nodded, pretending agreement, while inside, his world collapsed piece by piece. He wanted to speak, to confess, to explain, but fear sealed his mouth. Power had taught him how to control rooms, not how to face truth. As the conversation ended, the man excused himself with respect, leaving the billionaire standing alone in the crowd, surrounded by people. Yet completely isolated, he realized then that forgiveness could not be demanded, only earned, and he had done nothing to deserve it. Days passed, but the encounter haunted him. Every look, every word replayed endlessly. He knew now, beyond doubt, that the man was the boy. Time had confirmed what fear had whispered for years. The billionaire's health worsened, sleepless nights became normal, his appetite vanished, and doctors warned him again. This time, he listened, not because he feared death, but because he feared leaving without truth. He reached out carefully, using official channels, requesting a private meeting. He framed it as a discussion about charity funding, partnership, collaboration, anything to be near the man again, anything to speak. The man agreed, unaware of the storm waiting. He entered the private room calmly. Carrying no expectations, the billionaire stood as he entered, his hands shaking openly now. There was no room for masks anymore. They sat across from each other in silence. Heavy and thick, the billionaire struggled to breathe. Then slowly, painfully, he spoke. His voice cracked as he described a night long ago. An empty road, a sick child, a decision made from fear. The man listened without interruption, his face unreadable. His eyes never left the billionaire's. When the truth was finally spoken aloud, the room felt smaller, tighter, like it could not contain the weight of it. Tears filled the billionaire's eyes, something he had not allowed in decades. He admitted everything, the shame, the regret, the years of denial. He did not ask for forgiveness. He said he did not deserve it. Silence followed, long and steady. The man stood slowly, his expression calm but distant. He spoke softly, saying he had lived a full life despite the pain. He said suffering had shaped him, but not broken him. He acknowledged the truth without anger, without comfort. He said some wounds do not bleed forever, but they leave scars that remind. He told the billionaire that forgiveness was not a gift. It was a process, and some journeys are walked alone. Those words broke the billionaire completely. Not because they were cruel, but because they were honest. He realized then that redemption was not guaranteed, only responsibility. The man left the room quietly, carrying his strength with him, leaving the billionaire alone with the truth he had avoided all his life. For the first time, wealth felt like nothing. Part 7 was the collision of past and present. The moment abandonment met consequence. The moment power met humanity. And the moment a man learned that survival can be stronger than regret. The billionaire did not leave the building immediately after the meeting. He remained seated long after the room had emptied, staring at the chair across from him as if the man might return. The silence felt heavier than any punishment he had imagined. There were no guards, no accusations, no public shame, only truth, and it crushed him completely. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to lose something that could never be bought back. He had always believed that consequences came quickly and loudly, but this one came slowly, quietly, and without mercy. It followed him into every corner of his life. In the weeks that followed, the billionaire changed, not in ways that impressed others, but in ways that stripped him bare. He stepped away from the spotlight, canceled appearances, and withdrew from deals he once chased obsessively. His empire continued without him, but he felt separate from it, like a visitor in his own life. He began giving away wealth differently now, not for image or control, but as an act of responsibility. He funded hospitals, shelters, and programs for abandoned children, especially those battling illness. He never attached his name, never sought praise. He knew no amount of good could erase what he had done, but he believed it was still his duty to try. At night, he wrote letters he never sent, words filled with apology, regret, and truth. He wrote to the boy he abandoned, not asking for forgiveness, but acknowledging pain. Some letters ended unfinished, his hands shaking too much to continue. Others ended with silence, because some things cannot be fixed with words. His health continued to decline. Doctors spoke carefully now, using softer voices, The billionaire listened without fear. He was no longer afraid of losing life. He was afraid of leaving it without honesty, without having faced the truth fully. Meanwhile, the man who had once been abandoned moved forward with quiet strength. He did not speak publicly about the truth. He did not expose the billionaire or seek justice through revenge. His life had taught him that peace was not found in destruction, but in boundaries. He continued his work, expanding programs, mentoring young people, and protecting children who reminded him of himself. His story inspired many. Though most never knew its full depth, he carried his past like a scar, visible only to those who looked closely. Sometimes, in quiet moments, he thought about the billionaire, not with hatred, but with understanding shaped by distance. He accepted that some people learn too late, and that acceptance does not require closeness. Forgiveness, he realized, was not the same as reunion. Months later, news quietly spread that the billionaire had stepped down permanently, citing health reasons. The world moved on quickly, replacing his name with another. That was when he understood how small fame truly was. On a calm afternoon, the billionaire requested one final meeting, not to speak, not to explain, but to listen. The man agreed, under one condition, that it would be brief and private. They sat together again, not across a table this time, but side by side in a quiet garden. The billionaire looked smaller now, thinner, older. The man looked steady, grounded, complete. No long speeches were made. The billionaire thanked him for surviving, for becoming who he was despite everything. He said seeing that strength had broken him and saved him at the same time. The man listened and nodded. He said survival was not a gift from pain, but a choice made every day. He said some roads are meant to teach, not to destroy. They parted without promises, without plans, without pretending to be what they were not. And somehow, that honesty felt like closure. The billionaire passed away quietly months later, with no grand headlines. His final acts were not remembered by the world, but they mattered. They mattered because they came from truth, not image. The man stood on that same road years later, now paved and busy. No one recognized it as the place where a life was once abandoned. He looked around calmly, breathing in the air. He was no longer that boy. He was proof that pain does not decide destiny. The story ended not with revenge, but with responsibility. Not with punishment, but with understanding. It was a reminder that wealth can build empires, but only humanity can build legacies, and that sometimes the ones left behind become the strongest voices of all.